Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Coffee Break. It's Steve Barrett here, the Editorial Director of PR Week. Delighted to be with Andy Pharoah, who's the VP of Corporate Affairs and Sustainability at Mars. And we are going to talk about, in case you can't notice by looking at the products behind Andy, we're going to talk about purpose and branding and some interesting initiatives that you've been doing over there. So welcome to Coffee Break, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to join you.
Yeah, so the reason for the convo originally, we'll talk about purpose generally, but one of the interesting projects you're doing is with Sheba, your pet food brand, and a link up with coral restoration. So tell us about that, how it came about and what the sort of linkage is and why you've gone down that road.
The quick answer is that coral are essential to fish, and fish is essential to Sheba. Cats like eating fish. So there is a natural link between the product and the role that coral reefs play in our ecosystem. If you go back a bit further, actually, we got involved in coral actually because of cocoa. We have cocoa operations in Indonesia, and we saw firsthand the importance that the reef played in feeding the local community in terms of fishing. And so back in about 2010, we worked to develop a reef restoration system, and actually have now for over a decade been successfully rebuilding and regrowing coral. And so now we have linked that with Sheba, and essentially plan to, over the next, until the end of a decade, kind of rebuild reefs off the coasts of 5 countries, and a large area. I think 184 Olympic swimming pools amount of coral being rebuilt.
Okay, so interesting. That wasn't an obvious link. So I mean, it's good to know the connection there. What percentage of, just because I've got a couple of cats, is fish flavor the most popular flavor? Because Sheba's a kind of a luxury cat brand, isn't it? It's
a significant part of the portfolio. Obviously, you've got meat products in there as well, and we've been going on a fish sustainability journey. So we're committed to 100% sustainable fish, and we're about 80% of the way there. But fish is also iconographically, it links very well with cats and cat owners. So there's also an emotional connection between fish and cat food.
Yeah, for sure. Now tell us a bit, let's sort of stand back a bit and see and talk about how brand purpose and sustainability fits into Mars overall. You've got lots of different brands across lots of different product areas. We can chat about Ben's Original and the journey that brand went on, but to give us the sort of 360-degree view on it and how it's embedded in the business, because a lot of people talk about this, don't they? But how do you make sure it's really authentic and genuine and that the actions are following the words?
Yeah, I mean, look, Mars is a privately owned company. We've been operating for over 100 years. We have operations in over 80 countries. We sell in about 180 countries, and we employ 140,000 people. So it's a big company across many categories, and many people know us best for confectionery and for chocolate, but actually our biggest business is pet care, and actually our biggest group of associates is actually work in veterinary hospitals. Over half our associates actually work in veterinary hospitals. It's always been a very principles-driven business, and those principles were codified in the 1980s. And anyone who's spent any time in Mars or working with Mars know that what's different about Mars is the how. But it wasn't until recent years that we really codified that into a purpose, which is the world we want tomorrow starts with how we do business today. And it wasn't so much inventing a purpose, but it was more about actually just digging it from what existed already and finding a good way of articulating it. So we already have, when we launched it, had a whole bunch of proof points about how actually we did this. I mean, if you take our Sustainable Generation Plan, which we launched in 2017 with big investments, but we set a net zero target for our operations back in 2009. I mean, nobody was talking net zero then, but we were. So I think we see it very much as this needs to be built from the inside out. And it needs to be about who you are as a company, what you do as a company. And then I think brands can play a powerful role in activating against that and bringing it to life. But importantly, I don't believe that's the role of every brand.
So dig a little deeper into that then. How do you decide which brands are right and which aren't, and and how to do it right?
Yeah. I think the wrong way to do it is essentially to have a sort of sustainable development goal lucky dip, and you pull out a sustainable development goal and you say every brand must have this, or every brand must have one of these, and then try to find a way to connect your brand to it. I think the first thing is to recognize with your brands is there a natural link? So if you take Pedigree, we've got a natural link around dog adoption. We've been doing dog adoption and getting pets rehomed for many years, and so you can see how naturally a Feed the Good campaign, which is about the power that pets bring to our life, is real. It's true to the brand, and it's based on acts. It's based on what we do, not just our ads. I think this very much of acts, not ads, is very much the approach. So you've got brands where they naturally connect. Sheba is a good example where it's easy to connect with. We were doing work on coral reefs. We've been doing it for a decade. It was real. It was science-based, and it was making a real difference to the world. I mean, something like 40% of the coral reefs could disappear by 2023. I mean, there are this is something under threat. So there's a natural linkage there, and there's natural linkage actually sometimes when consumers adopt your brands. We've seen with Pride, the Skittles was probably adopted before Skittles actually started to activate around Pride. So I think is it real? Is it relevant? Does the brand have a role to play? And can you point to action beyond just the advertising, just beyond just raising the cause or raising the issue?
And you were saying before we started filming that actually executives are targeted against this, so it's a real business driver. It's not just rhetoric.
Well, we have a set of shareholder objectives which are on our website called the Mars Compass, and that sets shareholder objectives around backward-looking financial performance, forward-looking how well are we positioned for future success, which we call quality of growth, positive societal impact, which we're measuring through our sustainable generation plan. So things like climate change, improving the lives of people in our supply chain, and the level of trust we create externally and internally. And that Mars Compass is used as the primary determinant of one of the most significant remuneration schemes for our 300 top senior leaders. So it is very material that we make progress overall. That in itself doesn't determine what the brands do. I think every brand has a role to play. Every brand has a role to play in terms of the things often that you don't see. Who makes the advertising? How do you feature people? Are you pursuing stereotypes or not? Are you advertising responsibly? All of those things, and I think every brand can play a role in that. Some brands then can tie up with a particular cause over a particular period of time, and other brands it can be very much baked in its core. So Pedigree is a good example of that, and Ben's Original is an example of a brand where purpose is baked into the core.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because obviously the last 16 months have been extraordinary on a number of levels. The health pandemic, the racial reckoning of last year, and that really did shine a spotlight on legacy brands like what was Uncle Ben's, and it kind of forced that journey, which maybe you were on already. I don't know. Tell us about it, and tell us how you coped with that, and how you came up with the new branding.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't new to us as a topic, as an issue, and we had looked at it before, and we looked at it quite seriously probably a decade earlier. And interestingly, views were very split within communities. There was no one demographic that thought we should or shouldn't change it. Every demographic, you pick it, was split on it, but during last year, it became increasingly apparent that the brand was rooted in an unhelpful past, and we needed to make a call on what to do. We'd actually made a call on what to do, and we decided what we wanted to do. But then we got asked the question. We got asked the question externally, and so we had to make a decision there. Do we say what we've been saying for the past decade or so? Or do we go a bit sooner with what, in fact, we had decided to do? And we took a decision to go a little bit sooner and to announce that we were going to make a change, and to then quickly to come out with the new name Ben's Original. We did a lot of work with communities, and in the US, Ben's Original is produced in Greenville, Mississippi. And the success of that product is a global brand, a very successful global brand. The success of that product is very material to that community, which has a large African American population in Greenville, Mississippi. So we absolutely had to get it right. We moved quickly to announce it, and now the product actually is on in many countries. Is on shelf, and we're making a hard change rather than just effectively let packaging run out. When we did that, at the same time, we said, okay, well, it's not just about the name change. It's about having a purpose, which is essentially creating opportunities that offer everyone a seat at the table, with a real focus around culinary education, which the brand had been active on. But in the US, for example, we're partnering with the National Urban League on a scholarship program, to increase the number of Black chefs. We're also doing work in Greenville, which surprisingly for a town that has a food factory and is somewhat of a food desert for fresh food. So we've made a $5 million commitment along with a local retailer to actually make efforts to address it. So we feel it is consistent, and it's been done right the way through the brands. There are the ads about it, but it really is built on acts.
What was the toughest part of that process then for you as a storyteller and as a communicator and a guardian of reputation, if you like?
On Ben's Originally, it was simply that every demographic was split. Every demographic, and so it was making a call that you knew that whatever you decided, you would upset a large group of people. And in the days of social media, where outrage is driven by algorithm, you know that people are going to see that. This is not it's not just about doing a couple of media interviews hoping they land well. You know that people are going to react to it, and But we did what we felt was right. It was a very consultative process with the community, with community leaders externally within our own associate base. We made a call to do what was right, and we went ahead and we moved quickly.
Yeah, I think that's important, actually, moving swiftly and making a decision and acting on it quickly. I think it is important. It just shows how brands are embedded in people's lives, though, doesn't it? And people have nostalgia. It reminds them of their childhood. So, yeah, they're big decisions. You mentioned social media. It's an incredibly powerful force for harnessing conversations around your brands. It can be really positive, but it can also be incredibly negative. As a marketer, storyteller, how do you ensure that you're making the right decision? Or do you sometimes just have to take a punt on things and see how it goes?
Honestly, you have to take a punt on lots of things. You have to take a punt on things and say, if what you're doing is based on clear principles, we have a set of 5 principles, very clear, been there forever. You've got a compass that is really driving a direction that asks everyone each and every day, how are what you're doing today creating the world we want tomorrow? Is it in a positive step? If you're doing that and you're going to get it right much of the time. You can't overreact to what is being said on social media. Equally, it's very dangerous to jump on bandwagons. We all see 10 to 100 stories a day that you could jump on and try to exploit. But if it isn't built on truth, if it isn't built on who you are, if it isn't built on what you do and what your brand does, then it's on incredibly weak foundations.
Not everyone associates Mars with pet food and pet care, do they? And that's an interesting point that you made, that is the biggest part of your business. So yeah, a big part of your storytelling and your narrative.
Yeah, we've only been in pet food, since 1935. So it's relatively new. Chocolate was before them. Only been in veterinary care since the 1990s. But obviously, also as a privately held company, you are not so much talking your financial results. You're not talking them, and so the things whereby that many people learn about what brands are with what companies, doesn't know, and it's not that we don't have to appeal to an external shareholder base. We're family owned, and we can speak to all of our members of that family in an afternoon if we so choose. But Maltese is a good example of a brand that's really used its advertising to feature people the way they are, and to feature different sorts of people in advertising than you would normally feature. And it's been quite groundbreaking, some of the work that's been done. I think the most recent work that we've done has been really around maternal mental health, which is a real issue. It's an issue that isn't talked about that much, and Maltesers was able both to highlight it in a Maltesers style way through advertising, raise real issues, but also support that with supporting organisations that are working on the issues. And it was in some ways it was creatively risky, but it was incredibly well received.
Yeah, nice one. Well, good luck with it. Good luck with the coral restoration work. That sounds like fantastic stuff. And with your other purposeful initiatives at Mars. Great to chat. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Steve.